The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke as Liam Carter stumbled out of the swirling vortex of light. One moment, he'd been strumming his guitar in a dimly lit Brooklyn bar, the clink of glasses and murmurs of a half-drunk crowd filling the space. The next, he was sprawled on a muddy hill, the distant howl of wind and the bleating of sheep replacing the urban hum. His worn leather jacket was splattered with dirt, his guitar case miraculously still clutched in his hand. He blinked, heart pounding, as the realization hit: this wasn't New York. This wasn't 2025. The sky above was a bruised gray, heavy with the threat of rain. Rolling green hills stretched endlessly, dotted with stone walls and thatched roofs that looked like they'd been plucked from a history book. A lone figure, a shepherd in a rough woolen cloak, stared at him from a distance, his weathered face a mask of suspicion. Liam scrambled to his feet, his sneakers sinking into the muck. "Hey man, where am I?" he called, but the shepherd turned and hustled away, muttering something in a language Liam couldn't place. Ireland. The word hit him like a chord. The lilting accents he'd heard in documentaries, the Celtic knots he'd seen on tourist trinkets, all clicked. But this wasn't the Ireland of pubs and fiddles. This was raw, untamed, ancient. He glanced at his phone. No signal, no bars, just a dead screen mocking his confusion. Panic clawed at his chest, but Liam was no stranger to chaos. He'd busked on subway platforms, dodged eviction notices, and played gigs for crowds that threw bottles instead of tips. If he was stuck in some medieval fever dream, he'd figure it out. He slung his guitar case over his shoulder and trudged toward the cluster of huts in the distance. The village of Dunrath was a humble sprawl of stone and timber, its streets, if you could call them, thatchered into mud by cartwheels and livestock. As Liam approached, heads turned. A woman with a basket of turnips froze, her eyes wide. A gaggle of children in tattered tunics pointed and whispered. An old man with a beard like tangled wool spat into the dirt, muttering, "Sassenach." Liam didn't know the word, but the venom in it was clear. He forced a grin, the one that had charmed club promoters and skeptical bartenders. "Hey folks, I'm Liam. Just, passing through." His Brooklyn drawl sounded alien here, each syllable drawing more stares. A burly man with a blacksmith's arms stepped forward, his gaze flicking to the guitar case. "What manner of man carries a box of wood and walks like a lord?" he demanded, his accent thick but intelligible. Liam's grin widened. "This? It's no box. It's a guitar. Makes music that'll knock your socks off." The blacksmith frowned, clearly unfamiliar with the phrasier socks, for that matter. Liam unlatched the case, revealing the battered acoustic guitar inside. Its polished wood gleamed even in the dull light, a relic from a future these people couldn't imagine. He strummed a quick chord, the sound rich and resonant. The crowd gasped, some stepping back, others leaning closer. A child giggled, clapping her hands. "Witchcraft," the old man hissed, but the blacksmith raised a hand, silencing him. "Play more," he said, his tone a mix of curiosity and challenge. Liam didn't hesitate. He launched into a folk tune he'd written back in Brooklyn, a rollicking melody about late nights and lost loves. His voice, rough but soulful, carried over the village, drawing more onlookers. Women paused their washing, men set down their tools, and soon a small crowd had gathered, their faces alight with wonder. This was Liam's element. He'd always had a knack for reading a room, for turning strangers into fans. But these weren't jaded city dwellers. They were people whose lives were bound by toil and tradition. Their music, he'd later learn, was the droning chant of monks or the simple pluck of a lyre, sacred but somber. Liam's song was a wildfire, its rhythm infectious, its chords bold. By the time he finished, the crowd was clapping, some swaying despite themselves. Even the blacksmith cracked a smile. "By the saints," a woman murmured, her eyes shining. "'Tis like the songs of the Aussie." Liam didn't know what that meant, but he bowed theatrically, earning a ripple of laughter. For a moment, he felt like himself again, Liam Carter, the guy who could make any crowd sing. But the moment shattered when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Enough of this foolery." A man pushed through the crowd, his presence commanding instant silence. He was tall, with a hawkish face and a cloak adorned with intricate embroidery. A small harp, its strings glinting, hung at his side. This, Liam guessed, was the village's music master, a bard or whatever they called them here. His name, he'd later learn, was Cillian, and his eyes burned with a mix of disdain and envy. "Who dares bring such clamor to Dunrath?" Cillian demanded, his voice dripping with authority. "This noise is no music. It is a mockery of our craft." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, their earlier joy dimming. Liam's hackles rose. He dealt with gatekeepers before club owners who sneered at his style, critics who called his work derivative. He wasn't about to let some medieval snob ruin his vibe. "Noise?" Liam shot back, his tone light but edged. "Buddy, this is music. Real music. Makes people feel something." He strummed another chord for emphasis, and a few villagers smiled despite themselves. Cillian's face darkened. "You speak boldly for a stranger," he said, stepping closer. "From whence do you come, with your odd tongue and stranger garb?" Liam hesitated. He couldn't exactly say, "Brooklyn, 2025. Instead, he shrugged, leaning on charm. "Far off. Place called, America, land of dreamers and singers." The lie felt flimsy, but the crowd murmured, intrigued. Cillian, however, wasn't buying it. "America," he sneered. "A land of fools, no doubt. Begone, wanderer, before you taint our village with your sorcery." The word sorcery sent a chill through Liam. He'd read enough history to know how medieval folks handled witches, but before he could respond, the blacksmith whose name was Brendan spoke up. "Let him stay, Cillian. His music brings joy. The village could use it." A few others nodded, emboldened. Cillian's jaw tightened, but he couldn't argue with the crowd's mood. With a final glare, he turned and stalked away, his harp jangling faintly. Brendan clapped Liam on the shoulder. "You've a gift, lad. Stay a while. Share your songs." Liam exhaled, relief washing over him. He had no idea how he'd gotten here or how to get back, but for now, he had a foothold. Dunrath was his stage, and he'd play it like he'd played every dive bar in Brooklyn. That night, he sat by a fire in Brendan's home, a low stone hut filled with the smell of stew and peat. The blacksmith's wife, Maeve, ladled him a bowl, her curiosity plain. "Your music," she said softly. "It's like nothing we know. Where did you learn it?" Liam smiled, deflecting with a story about America's endless skies and wild rivers. He didn't mention electric guitars or Spotify playlists. As he ate, he studied the village through the hut's small window. Torches flickered outside, casting shadows on the mud-streaked walls. Dunrath was alive with whispers of his arrival, his guitar already the stuff of gossip, but Liam felt the weight of Cillian's hostility. The bard wasn't just a rival, he was a threat. Liam had seen that look before, in musicians who'd sabotage a set list or badmouth a newcomer to promoters. Cillian wouldn't let this go. The next morning, Liam woke to a crowd outside Brendan's hut. Word had spread, and villagers clamored for another song. He obliged, playing a softer tune this time, one about home and longing. His voice cracked on the high notes, raw with the ache of displacement, and the crowd fell silent, moved. Even Maeve, watching from the doorway, wiped her eyes. For the first time, Liam wondered if his music could do more than entertain if it could anchor him in this strange world. But Cillian was watching too, from the edge of the crowd. His fingers twitched near his harp, and his eyes glinted with a plan. Liam didn't see it, but he felt it, the first notes of a rivalry that would shake Dunrath to its core. As the villagers cheered, a storm was brewing, one that would test Liam's wit, his courage, and the power of a song from a world not yet born. The sun hung low over Dunrath, painting the hills in hues of amber and gold, as Liam Carter strummed his guitar outside Brendan's hut. The village had become his stage, and each day brought a larger crowd, their faces alight with a hunger for something new. His music raw, soulful, and pulsing with the rhythms of a future they couldn't fathom had woven itself into the fabric of Dunrath. Children skipped through the mud, humming his melodies. Women sang snatches of his choruses while scrubbing linens. Even the gruffest farmers tapped their feet when he played. Liam, with his Brooklyn swagger and quick grin, was no longer just a stranger. He was their storyteller, their spark. But not everyone was charmed. Cillian, the village bard, lurked at the edges of Liam's performances, his hawkish face a storm cloud amid the crowd's joy. His harp, once the heart of Dunrath's music, now gathered dust in his hut, its strings untouched since Liam's arrival. The villagers' adoration for Liam's guitar songstunes they called Wild as the Wind and Sweet as Summer Mead was a blade in Cillian's pride. He was a man of tradition, trained in the ancient arts of the Fili, the poet-bards whose songs wove Ireland's history. To him, Liam's music was chaos, a foreign plague that mocked the sacred chants of his ancestors. Worse, it was winning. Liam, for his part, was too caught up in the thrill of performance to notice the depth of Cillian's resentment. He'd faced hecklers and jealous rivals in Brooklyn dive bars, but this was different. This was a world where music wasn't just art, it was power, status, a link to the divine. He didn't see the danger brewing, not yet. Instead, he leaned into his role, his confidence growing with every cheer. He'd taken to calling the village's small harps green guitars, a joke that sent the children into fits of giggles and earned him fond smiles from Maeve, Brendan's wife. "You've a tongue as quick as your fingers," she teased one evening, passing him a mug of ale. Liam had winked, strumming a playful riff. "Gotta keep up with the crowd, Maeve." His latest obsession was teaching the villagers to sing along. He'd adapted one of his songs, a foot-stomping folk tune about chasing dreams across the Hudson River, into a call-and-response number. He'd sing a line, "Out on the water, where the heart runs free," and the crowd would echo, their voices hesitant at first, but growing bolder with each verse. The sight of Dunrath's people, from grizzled shepherds to wide-eyed kids, belting out his lyrics, filled Liam with a warmth he hadn't felt since his best nights at Brooklyn's knitting factory. This, he thought, was why he'd kept playing despite empty wallets and broken strings. This was music's magic. But magic, Liam would soon learn, could spark both wonder and wrath. One crisp morning, as he tuned his guitar by the village well, a shadow fell over him. He looked up to find Cillian, his cloak billowing in the breeze, his eyes cold as the stone walls around them. "You think yourself a bard? American?" Cillian spat the word, like a curse. "You, with your box of tricks and your doggerel rhymes?" Liam leaned back, unfazed. He'd dealt with guys like this self-important types who thought their way was the only way. "Not trying to be anything, man," he said, plucking a lazy chord. "Just sharing some tunes. People seem to like 'em." He flashed a grin, the one that usually disarmed critics, but Cillian's face only hardened. "The people are fools, swayed by novelty," Cillian said, stepping closer. "You defile our music, our ways. Dunrath songs are sacred, bound to the gods and the land. Yours are noise." The word dripped with disdain, and Liam's grin faltered. He could handle insults, but there was something in Cillian's tone, something dangerous, like a blade hidden in velvet. "Noise?" Liam stood, slinging his guitar over his shoulder. "Maybe you're just scared of a little competition, Cillian. Ever think of that?" The words were out before he could stop them, and a murmur rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. Cillian's eyes flashed, and for a moment, Liam thought the bard might strike him. Instead, Cillian smiled, a thin, predatory curve of his lips. "Competition," he said softly. "You are no rival, wanderer. You are a flea, and I will crush you." With that, he turned and strode away, his cloak snapping like a whip. The crowd dispersed, whispering, and Liam felt a prickle of unease. He'd poked the bear, and in a place like Dunrath, where grudges ran deep, that could mean trouble. Trouble came sooner than he expected. That afternoon, as Liam played for a crowd near the village's central fire pit, a group of young Cillian's apprentices, he later learned, began to heckle. "Sing us a real song, American," one shouted, his voice slurred with ale. "None of this fairy nonsense." Another tossed a clod of mud, narrowly missing Liam's guitar. The crowd's mood shifted, some laughing nervously, others frowning. Liam kept playing, his fingers steady, but his heart raced. He'd busked in rough neighborhoods, but this felt different, organized, malicious. He switched to a faster tune, one he'd written about dodging cops in the Bronx, its rhythm sharp and defiant. The hecklers faltered, caught off guard by the song's energy, and the crowd roared approval, drowning them out. Liam locked eyes with one of the troublemakers, a wiry kid with a sneer, and sang directly to him. "Run from the shadows, but the light's gonna find ya." The kid flushed, backing off, and the tension broke like a wave. The villagers clapped, some stomping their feet, and Liam finished with a flourish, his chest heaving. Crisis averted for now. But Cillian wasn't done. Over the next few days, his campaign grew subtler, more insidious. Rumors spread. Liam's music was cursed, a lure for dark spirits. His guitar was a devil's tool, its strings woven with sorcery. Some villagers, swayed by fear or loyalty to Cillian, began to avoid Liam's performances. Others, like Brendan and Maeve, stood by him, but even they looked worried. "Cillian's got the ear of the chieftain," Brendan warned one night, his voice low. "And the druids. He's no mere bard, Liam. He's a power in Dunrath." Liam shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Let him scheme. I've got the crowd." But doubt gnawed at him. He was a stranger here, a man out of time, with no allies beyond a blacksmith and a few fans. If Cillian turned the village against him, where would he go? The hills? The woods? He didn't even know how he'd gotten to 800 AD, let alone how to survive it. The turning point came at the market day, a bustling affair where traders from neighboring villages bartered wool, ale, and iron. Liam saw a chance to win back Dunrath's heart. He set up near the market's heart, his guitar gleaming in the sunlight, and launched into a set that blended his folk roots with the lilting cadence he'd picked up from Dunrath's own music. He sang of rivers and stars, of love and loss, his voice weaving a spell that stopped traders in their tracks. A girl with braids, no older than 16, began to dance, her movements shy but joyful. Others joined, their laughter ringing out, and soon the market was a whirl of color and sound, Liam at its center. He didn't see Cillian watching from a nearby stall, his fingers white-knuckled around his harp. He didn't hear the bard's whispered words to a hooded figure, a druid whose eyes glinted with suspicion. But he felt the shift when the music stopped. A horn blared, silencing the crowd, and a man strode forward, his presence commanding instant respect. He was broad-shouldered, with a torque of gold at his neck and a sword at his hip. This, Liam realized, was the chieftain, Lord Fintan. "Stranger," Fintan said, his voice carrying over the market. "Your songs stir Dunrath, for good or ill. Cillian claims you mock our ways. Others say you bring joy. I would see the truth for myself." The crowd parted, and Liam's stomach lurched. This was no bar gig, this was a test, and failure could mean exile or worse. Fintan raised a hand. "A great feast approaches, 3 days hence, to honor the harvest. I would have music to lift our spirits. You, American, will compose a song for this feast. If it pleases me, you may stay. If it fails, you will leave Dunrath by dawn." The words hung in the air, heavy as a storm cloud. Liam swallowed, his throat dry, but he nodded. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. The crowd murmured, some hopeful, others skeptical. Cillian stepped forward, his smile sharp as a blade. "A fine challenge, my lord," he said, bowing to Fintan, "but let us make it just. I too will compose a song. Let the village judge whose music is worthy." Fintan's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "So be it. 3 days, both of you. Prepare well." With that, he turned and left, the crowd erupting into whispers. Liam's heart pounded. A head-to-head with Cillian, in front of the entire village, with his future on the line? This wasn't just a gidget, was a duel. As the market dispersed, Maeve found him, her face pale. "Liam, you don't know what you've agreed to. Cillian's trained his whole life for this. His songs they're magic, in their way. The druids bless them." Liam forced a laugh, though his gut twisted. "Magic, huh? Well, I've got a few tricks of my own." But as he walked back to Brendan's hut, his guitar heavy on his shoulder, he felt the weight of Cillian's threat. 3 days to write a song that could outshine a bard's masterpiece. In a world that wasn't his, 3 days to prove he belonged. That night, he sat by the fire, scribbling lyrics on a scrap of parchment Maeve had given him. His mind raced, pulling from every song he'd ever written, every story he'd heard. He thought of Brooklyn's lights, of his mother's lullabies, of the dreams that had carried him through lean years. But Cillian's face haunted him, that cold smile promising ruin. And somewhere, in the shadows of Dunrath, the druid watched, their motives unknown. Liam's fingers trembled as he strummed, but he pushed on. He'd faced long odds before. He'd make this song his best yet or die trying. The air in Dunrath crackled with anticipation. as if the very hills held their breath. 3 days had passed since Lord Fintan's decree, and the harvest feast loomed like a storm on the horizon. Liam Carter, the stranger from a place called America, sat cross-legged in Brendan's hut, his guitar cradled in his lap, its strings worn from endless practice. His eyes were bloodshot, his fingers raw, and scraps of parchment littered the floor, each scrawled with half-formed lyrics and crossed-out chords. The weight of the challenge pressed on him like a millstone. Compose a song to rival Cillian, the village bard, or be cast out into the wilds of 800 AD Ireland. Failure wasn't just embarrassment, it was survival. Liam had written under pressure before, churning out songs for last-minute gigs in Brooklyn's grimmiest bars, but this was different. Dunrath's music was woven into its soul, a tapestry of myth and reverence. Cillian's songs, Maeve had warned, were blessed by druids steeped in the lore of gods and ancestors. Liam's? They were raw, human, born of dive bars and late-night subway rides. Could they compete in a world that saw his guitar as sorcery? Doubt gnawed at him, but he shoved it down. He'd faced worse odds eviction notices, hostile crowds, a broken heart or two. He'd find a way. The first day had been chaos. Liam had paced the hut, strumming fragments of melodies, searching for something that could bridge his world and Dunrath's. He tried a love ballad, but it felt too soft for a feast. A protest anthem, inspired by his days busking in Union Square, fell flat without the context of modern struggles. He even toyed with a rock riff, but the villagers wouldn't grasp its edge without electric amps. By nightfall, he'd had nothing but a headache and Maeve's worried glances. "You'll find it, lad," she'd said, setting a bowl of stew before him. "Your heart's in your music. Let it speak." Her faith steadied him, but the clock was ticking. Cillian, meanwhile, was a shadow over the village. He'd retreated to his hut, refusing visitors, but his apprentices spread tales of his work, a song so powerful it would call the stars to dance and shame Liam's foreign noise. The rumors stung, but worse was the sabotage. On the second day, Liam woke to find his guitar strings loosened, the tuning pegs tampered with. He'd fixed it, cursing under his breath, but the message was clear. Cillian wasn't playing fair. Later, a group of children, egged on by one of Cillian's lackeys, pelted Liam with pebbles as he practiced by the well. He'd laughed it off, tossing a playful chord their way, but the incidents piled up, fraying his nerves. The village itself was a tinderbox. Some, like Brendan and Maeve, rallied behind Liam, drawn to his warmth and the joy his music sparked. Others, swayed by Cillian's whispers of sorcery, eyed Liam with suspicion. The druids, silent figures in hooded cloaks, watched from the sidelines, their motives opaque. Liam caught one staring during a practice session, their eyes glinting like polished obsidian. It unnerved him, but he had no time to dwell. The feast was tomorrow, and he needed a song. Inspiration struck on the third day as he wandered the hills beyond Dunrath, seeking quiet. The landscape emerald slopes, mist-cloaked stones felt alive, whispering stories of its own. He sat by a stream, its burble blending with the wind's sigh, and closed his eyes. Memories flooded in, his mother's voice singing him to sleep in their cramped Queen's apartment, the roar of a Coney Island crowd as he played his first paid gig, the ache of leaving a lover at dawn. But other images came to Dunrath's laughter, Maeve's kindness, the children dancing to his tunes. This place, for all its strangeness, was becoming his home. He began to hum, a melody that wove his worlds together, the lilting cadence of Ireland's harps, the driving pulse of American folk. Words followed, raw and vivid. Over the hills where the heart takes flight, through shadows and fire, we chase the light. It was a song of journey, of longing, of finding belonging in a strange land. He played it through, his voice rising over the stream, and for the first time in days, he smiled. This was it, this could work. Back in the village, he refined it, teaching a simple chorus to a group of children who'd become his unofficial fan club. Their voices, high and clear, added a layer of magic he hadn't expected. "Sing it loud tomorrow," he told them, ruffling their hair. "We're gonna blow the roof off." They giggled, not understanding the phrase but catching his fire. By nightfall, he was as ready as he'd ever be, though sleep eluded him. Cillian's threat loomed large, and the druid's gaze haunted his dreams. The feast dawned bright, the village transformed. Torches lined the central square, where tables groaned under roasted boar, fresh bread, and vats of mead. Banners of woven wool fluttered in the breeze, and the air buzzed with excitement. Villagers in their finest tunics mingled with traders from afar, their chatter punctuated by laughter. But beneath the revelry ran a current of tension. Tonight wasn't just a feast, it was a reckoning. Liam versus Cillian. The stranger versus the bard. Lord Fintan presided from a raised platform, his gold torque gleaming. Beside him sat the druids, their faces unreadable. Liam, in his cleaned-up leather jacket and borrowed wool cloak, felt like a fish out of water. His guitar hung at his side, a lifeline in the chaos. Cillian, resplendent in a crimson cloak, stood nearby, his harp polished to a shine. He caught Liam's eye and smirked, a predator sizing up prey. Liam forced a grin, but his stomach churned. This was it. Fintan raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Tonight, we honor the harvest and the music that binds us," he said, his voice booming. "Two will sing, Cillian, our bard, and Liam, the stranger from America. Let their songs prove their worth." The crowd cheered, though some glances at Liam were wary. Cillian stepped forward first, as was his right, and the square fell hushed. He began with a single note, his harp's strings singing like a lover's whisper. His voice joined, low and resonant, weaving a tale of Ireland's hero kings who battled giants, lovers who defied the gods. The melody was intricate, each note precise, and the crowd swayed, entranced. Liam watched, his heart sinking. Cillian was good, damn good. The song built to a crescendo, invoking the land itself, and when it ended, the applause was thunderous. Cillian bowed, his eyes flicking to Liam with a glint of triumph. "Beat that," they said. Liam's mouth went dry. The crowd's eyes turned to him, some hopeful, others skeptical. He stepped forward, guitar in hand, and took a breath. "This one's for you, Dunrath," he said, his Brooklyn drawl cutting through the silence. "For the hills, the fires, and the dreams we share." He strummed the first chord, bold and bright, and launched into his song. The melody was a river, flowing from soft verses to a soaring chorus. He sang of wandering, of finding home in strange places. Over the hills, where the heart takes flight, through shadows and fire, we chase the light. His voice, rough but soulful, carried the ache of his journey from 2025 to this ancient world, from loneliness to belonging. The children's chorus joined in, their voices a spark that lit the crowd. Villagers began to clap, then stomp, their rhythm syncing with his. A girl in the front row started to dance, her braids flying, and others followed, their laughter rising like smoke. But Cillian wasn't idle. As Liam's song peaked, a commotion broke out at the square's edge. One of Cillian's apprentices, a lanky youth named Rory, shoved through the crowd, shouting, "Sorcery! His music bewitches us!" He pointed at Liam, his face twisted with rehearsed outrage. The crowd faltered, some turning to Fintan, others murmuring. Liam's fingers slipped, a chord jangling discordantly. The moment teetered on a knife's edge. Rory lunged forward, grabbing for the guitar. "This devil's box!" he yelled, but Liam sidestepped, instincts honed from dodging drunks in bars. "Back off, kid!" he snapped, his voice carrying. The crowd gasped, torn between shock and amusement. Rory hesitated, and Liam seized the moment. He strummed again, louder, defying the interruption. "Let's finish this, Dunrath!" he roared, and the children's voices rose, pulling the crowd back. The dancers spun faster, the claps grew fiercer, and Rory slunk back, defeated. Liam poured everything into the final verses. Fear, his hope, his love for this strange, wild place. As the last note faded, the square erupted. Villagers cheered, some weeping, others embracing. Maeve's eyes shone with pride. Brendan pumped a fist. Even Fintan leaned forward, his stern face softened. Cillian's smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl. Liam bowed, his chest heaving, adrenaline singing in his veins. He'd done it. He'd won them. Fintan stood, his presence silencing the crowd. "Cillian's song was a jewel of our tradition," he said, nodding to the bard. "But Liam's, it stirred the heart of Dunrath. It is new, yet it speaks to us." He paused, his gaze locking on Liam. "You will stay, American, and serve as our music master," the crowd roared, drowning Cillian's muttered protest. Liam's knees nearly buckled with relief. He'd faced the fire and come out whole. But as the feast continued, a figure approached through the torchlighted druid, their hood low, their voice a whisper. "Your song was true, wanderer," they said, "but your path is not done. A cove beyond the hills hides a corm, a gate of time. It calls you. Will you seek it?" Liam's breath caught. A way home? To Brooklyn? To 2025? Or was Dunrath his home now? The druid slipped away, leaving him with the question, the music, and a village that had claimed him as its own. The harvest feast's embers glowed in Dunrath Square, casting a warm flicker over the revelers who danced and laughed into the night. Liam Carter stood at the heart of it, his guitar slung across his back, his leather jacket now adorned with a woven sash. Maeve had gifted him a mark of his new role as Dunrath's music master. The villagers' cheers still echoed in his ears, their joy a balm to the grueling days of doubt and sabotage. He'd faced Cillian's wrath, outshone the bard's sacred song, and won Lord Fintan's favor. For the first time since tumbling through that swirling vortex from 2025 Brooklyn, Liam felt like he belonged. But the druid's whispered words lingered like a haunting melody, a corm, a gate of time, hidden in a cove beyond the hills, a way back to his world or a trap. The night was alive with Dunrath's pulse. Women in flowing tunics spun to the rhythm of a piper's tune, their laughter mingling with the clink of mead-filled horns. Men, their faces flushed from ale, clapped each other's shoulders, recounting Liam's performance with exaggerated gestures. The air smelled of roasted boar, peat smoke, and the faint tang of autumn earth. Liam soaked it in, his Brooklyn-honed instincts drinking in the crowd's energy. He'd played dive bars and street corners, but this was different. This was a village claiming him as their own, their voices weaving his song into their story. Yet not all eyes were kind. Cillian, relegated to the shadows, nursed a horn of mead at the square's edge. His crimson cloak, once a symbol of his dominance, hung heavy on his shoulders, and his hawkish face was a mask of barely concealed fury. His apprentices, Rory among them, hovered nearby, their whispers sharp with plotting. Liam caught their glances, a prickle of unease cutting through his triumph. Cillian had lost the contest, but men like him didn't slink away quietly. Liam knew the type backstabbers who'd spike your drink or trash your gear. He'd have to watch his back. Maeve approached, her dark hair loose and shimmering in the torchlight, her woolen dress clinging to her curves as she moved. She was a vision of quiet strength, her eyes warm but searching. "You've done more than win a song, Liam," she said, her voice low, intimate. "You've given Dunrath hope." "But Cillian," she trailed off, glancing toward the bard. Liam followed her gaze, his jaw tightening. "He's licking his wounds," Liam said, forcing a grin. "Let him sulk." But Maeve's hand on his arm was firm, her touch sending a jolt through him. "He's no mere bard," she warned. "He's tied to the Druids, two powers older than Dunrath. Be wary, lad." Her fingers lingered, and Liam felt a pull, not just of caution, but of something deeper, a spark he hadn't dared name. He nodded, his voice softer. "I'll keep my eyes open, Maeve. Promise." The moment broke as Brendan, the blacksmith, clapped Liam's shoulder, his grin wide. "Come, music master, the lads want another tune." The crowd cheered, and Liam laughed, swept into the revelry. He unslung his guitar, strumming a lively riff that drew dancers back to the square. A young woman, her cheeks flushed and her tunic slipping off one shoulder, twirled close, her eyes bold as she beckoned him to join. Liam winked, keeping his focus on the music, but the heat of her gaze stirred him. Dunrath was raw, alive, its people unashamed in their joy. He could lose himself here if he chose to stay. But the Druid's words gnawed at him. As the night wore on, he slipped away from the crowd, needing air. He wandered to the village's edge, where the hills rose dark against a star-strewn sky. "The Cove," the Druid had said, "a gate of time." His mind raced, torn between two worlds. Brooklyn was neon lights, greasy diners, the grind of gigs and bills. Dunrath was firelight, community, a place where his music mattered. Yet the pull of home was fierce, his mother's voice, his friends' laughter, the dream of a big break. Could he abandon it all? Or was the Quorum a lie, a druid's trick to rid Dunrath of the sorcerer? His thoughts were cut short by a rustle in the dark. He spun, hand on his guitar case, instincts sharp from years in rough neighborhoods. A figure emerged. Rory, Cillian's apprentice, his wiry frame tense, a dagger glinting in his hand. "You've no place here, American," Rory hissed, his voice thick with venom. "Cillian says you're a blight. Leave, or I'll gut you." Liam's heart pounded, but he'd faced worse than a punk with a blade. Big talk for a kid who can't even heckle right. He shot back, stepping back to keep distance. Rory lunged, the dagger slashing air, and Liam dodged, swinging his guitar case like a club. It caught Rory's wrist, sending the blade flying. The apprentice yelped, stumbling, and Liam pinned him to the ground, knee on his chest. "Tell Cillian to fight his own battles," he growled. Rory glared but nodded, fear overtaking his bravado. Liam let him go, watching him scramble into the dark. The encounter left him shaken. Cillian wasn't just scheming, he was dangerous. Liam returned to the feast, his triumph soured. The crowd was thinning, villagers drifting to their huts, but Maeve found him again, her face pale. "I heard what happened," she whispered, pulling him aside. "Rory's Cillian's dog, but the druids, they're the ones to fear. They watch you, Liam. They know more than they say." Her hand brushed his, her touch a fleeting anchor. "What will you do?" Liam's gaze drifted to the hills. "There's a cove," he said, voice low. "A druid told me it holds a gate. A way back, maybe." Maeve's eyes widened, a flicker of pain crossing her face. "Back to your America?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Liam swallowed, torn. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I need to see it, to know." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Then go at dawn. I'll cover for you. But Liam," she stepped closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "Dunrath needs you. She stopped, her words hanging unspoken. Before he could respond, she turned and vanished into the crowd, leaving him with the ghost of her touch. Dawn came too soon. Liam slipped out of Brendan's hut, his guitar strapped to his back, a borrowed cloak hiding his modern clothes. The village slept, its fires reduced to ash, but he felt eyes on him, druids perhaps, or Cillian's spies. He moved quickly, following the druids' vague directions, past the stream, through a grove, to a cove where the sea met the cliffs. The hills were silent, their mist curling like spirits, and Liam's heart raced with equal parts dread and hope. What would he find? A portal to Brooklyn? A trap? Or nothing at all? The cove was a hidden gem, its cliffs framing a crescent of pebble-strewn shore. Waves crashed, their rhythm a counterpoint to his pulse. At the cove's heart stood a circle of stones, weathered and moss-covered, their arrangement too precise to be natural. Runes carved into them glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Liam's breath caught. This was it. The Corm, the gate. He stepped closer, the air humming with energy, and a vision flickered. Brooklyn's skyline, the sea train's rumble, his old life. But Dunrath's faces, Maeve's smile, the children's laughter tugged at him, rooting him to this world. He was so lost in thought he didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. A hand grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around. Cillian stood there, his harp slung across his chest, his eyes blazing. Behind him were two druids, their hoods low, and Rory, clutching a fresh dagger. "You thought to flee?" Cillian snarled. "To steal Dunrath's heart and vanish? I'll end you here, sorcerer." Liam's blood ran cold. He was outnumbered, cornered, with no allies. "I just wanted answers," he said, raising his hands. "I'm not your enemy, Cillian." But the bard laughed, a bitter sound. "You've taken everything, my place, my people. The druids see your power, they fear it." One druid stepped forward, their voice a hiss. "Your music disrupts the balance. Leave through the Corm, or die." The words hit like a punch. The druids weren't offering a choice, they were forcing one. Liam glanced at the stones, their glow intensifying. He could run, dive into the unknown, and maybe wake in Brooklyn. Or he could fight, risk everything for Dunrath. His hand brushed his guitar, its weight a reminder of who he was. He'd never backed down, Not from hecklers, not from poverty, not from time itself. He moved before he could second-guess himself, grabbing a loose stone and hurling it at Rory. The apprentice yelped, dropping his dagger, and Liam charged, tackling Cillian. The bard's harp clattered to the pebbles, and they grappled, fists flying. The druids shouted, one raising a staff, but Liam rolled free, grabbing his guitar. He strummed a single, defiant chord, the sound echoing off the cliffs like a war cry. The glow of the stones flickered, as if startled, and the druids hesitated, their eyes wide. "Stop!" a voice rang out. Maeve appeared at the cove's edge, breathless, her cloak askew. Behind her were Brendan and a handful of villagers, their faces fierce. "Let him go, Cillian," she demanded. "Liam's one of us." The bard froze, his chest heaving as the villagers closed in. The druids exchanged glances, then lowered their staffs, retreating into the mist. Rory fled, and Cillian, outnumbered, spat at Liam's feet. "This isn't over," he hissed before stalking away. Liam stood, panting, as Maeve rushed to him. "You're a fool," she said, but her eyes were soft, her hands gripping his arms. "I couldn't let you face this alone," he managed a shaky grin. "Thanks for the backup, Maeve." The villagers murmured approval, but their eyes darted to the stones, their glow now faint. Brendan clapped Liam's shoulder. "What now, lad? That corm's real. Will you go?" Liam looked at the stones, then at Dunrath's people, Maeve's fierce gaze, Brendan's steady presence, the children peeking from behind. The cove hummed, promising answers, but Dunrath held his heart. "I don't know," he said, voice raw, "but I'm not done here, not yet." The stones pulsed once, then dimmed, as if acknowledging his choicer, delaying it. As the villagers led him back to Dunrath, Maeve's hand brushed his, her touch a question. Cillian's threat lingered, and the druid's motives were a mystery. The corm waited, a door to another life. Would Liam stay, forging a home in this ancient world? Or would the call of Brooklyn pull him back? The answers lay ahead, hidden in the hills, in the music, in the choices yet to come. Want to know what Liam chooses? Will he face Cillian's revenge, unravel the druid's secrets, or step through the corm? Follow the channel for the next chapter of this time-traveling saga, where music, danger, and desire collide.